Welcome to episode 197 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer-producer Dan De Filippo. He recently did a remake of the Francis Ford Coppola film Dementia 13. So we talked through the process of how he was able to get this project off the ground, so stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 197. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Again, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. Quick few words about what I'm working on. Quick update on The Pinch, the crime action thriller feature film that I am finishing up. So I am making some slow progress. Last week I got with my film editor and we put together basically a complete version of the picture. So it has all the color correction and all the special effect shots are laid in. So that's super cool just to see the actual film and kind of what it's actually going to look like. There was a couple of small output glitches. I'm not exactly sure why, but when the color correctionist output his version of the film, there's just a moment where there's like some skipping frames and stuff. So there's a couple little glitches, but those are not super difficult to deal with. We just have to like re-output that 1 30-second clip again. And there's a little bit of cleanup. The opening and closing credits need a little bit of cleanup, but basically all the special effects are in, and basically, as I said, the color correction is all done. So now it's just a matter of waiting for the final sound mix, which it could take another month or so. So basically what has to happen now is my dialogue editor has to clean up, or I should say he has to finish up his part of the process. And he's doing a lot more than just the dialogue edit. He's filling in all the empty spots. So for instance, if there's some moments where there's no sound at all, you have to put in what's called room tone, which you record on set, just so you have like the background, like the birds tweeting and the cars, driving by, just so you have some background noise at all time. You can't have just complete silence. So you have to fill in some of those spots, and you just have to make sure that everything is covered properly. And you have to also pull out the sounds from the dialogue, and that's going to ultimately get us to an M&E mix, which is a music and effects mix, which they will use for dubbing the film. You will want basically a track of sound, which will be your score, your sound effects, but not your dialogue. And that's the M&E thing. That's the M&E version of the film, and as I said, that will be used for the foreigns. And so all these things are just very technical, and that's what has to happen. And as I said, this dialogue editor, he's doing a lot of that, and then ultimately once he's done, he will pass it along to the mixer. Then the mixer gets all of these different sound elements, the score, the sound design, which is the gunshots, the punching, the footsteps, all that sound information, and the dialogue, and he mixes them together. And he also will create a 5.1 surround sound stereo mix as well. I'll need that for distribution. So again, this is very technical stuff. I don't know that it's super interesting. Sound is one of those things. If it's not good, you notice it, but if it is like super good, you don't notice it. So sound is a real unsung hero in feature films, and it's better to take a little time and make sure it's good, because as I said, if there's some rough spots or some things that people notice, it really takes you out of the film watching process. And again, no one ever thanks the sound guy, because when the sound is perfect, nobody notices it. But when it's not perfect, it can really destroy the process of watching that film, because you just get really, really distracted. So I think that's all good news. It's all moving along. And let's just see here. And then so next week, or hopefully this week, and then next week, I'm going to be trying to find a trailer editor. I'm going to get a trailer cut, and then I will be able to start approaching distributors and film festivals. Because the other thing that my editor did was, I have all these different elements: the score, the sound design, the basic dialogue tracks. I have all those things. My editor has those things. So in the current version of the film that we produced, again, it has the color correction, the special effects. We just laid in the sound design. We laid in the score. Again, it's it's not mixed properly. So there are moments where the score is way, way too loud. There's moments where the gunshots are way too loud. So again, it has to be evened out, but it is a pretty complete version of the film. And this is something that I can at least start to submit to film festivals. I can submit it to distributors, basically tell distributors, yeah, there's a few glitches. There's a few things we still have to work on as far as the sound goes, but by and large, the film is just about done. And so hopefully I can start to initiate some of those conversations. And then, as that is moving along, hopefully then my sound team will be putting the polishes on that, and then hopefully it will all come together. But I think that's going to be sort of my strategy here in the next few weeks, is to start actually taking it out, showing it to some distributors, and maybe even start to enter into some film festivals as well. So that's exciting, and that's definitely moving forward. As I said, definitely going in the right direction. So that's a good feeling. I did a webinar last month, or I guess now it's 2 months ago, called The Pinch, Producing a Micro-Budget Feature Film, where I go into great detail on exactly how I wrote, directed, and produced this film. Specifically, I talk about how to write a micro-budget screenplay, and then I also talk about how to raise money to shoot your micro-budget screenplay. And this includes a lot of information on how to run a successful Kickstarter campaign, which I did for The Pinch, and then I also dig into pre-production, production, and of course post-production. The webinar is over 3 hours long, so there's a ton of hopefully really actionable information in it. I worked hard putting this webinar together, so I'm charging a small fee for you to view it. But if you're looking to write, direct, and produce a micro-budget film, I think this could really help you. Or if there's just a ton of information you want to learn as a screenwriter so that you can better service this market, because I think that this is a great market for screenwriters to pursue, the micro-budget film, because there's a ton of directors and producers out there looking for this type of material. So even if you don't consider yourself a director, if you don't want to be necessarily a producer, I still think understanding how micro-budget filmmaking works, understanding how to write your script so that it can be produced on a micro-budget could be very, very valuable. And again, all of that sort of information is in this webinar as well. You can find the webinar at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/thepinch, and the word "the pinch" is just all lowercase and it's all one word. I will, of course, link to it in the show notes as well. Anyway, so that's what I am working on. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer-producer Dan De Filippo. Here is the interview. Welcome, Dan, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me.
Thanks for having me, man.
So to start out, maybe you can just give us a little background about yourself. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
I grew up in Smithtown, Long Island. And, the entertainment industry kind of came knocking on my door. I used to be a journalist out in the Hamptons right after college. And it got really quiet over the winter. And my buddy called me from college and said, let's drive to California. So we did. Landed in LA and, just dove right in, so to speak.
Yeah. And maybe just talk about some of those first steps to actually turning it into a career. What did you do? Was it the typical, get a job in the mailroom, work your way up? Did you just start trying to make movies? What was sort of your path to actually turning it into a career?
Yeah, I actually, when I got to California, I was still a journalist. And then I went to Europe for a while and then came back to LA. And noticed that, all my buddies who didn't go to Europe for a while were all now had risen above the PA status, and were coordinators and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of jumped right in and was able to work for the producers of MGM's tentpole film Wind Talkers. And then just by working for them, I kind of leveraged into Genesis Literary Agency, where I assisted an agent, and from there I went to the William Morris Agency, and came up through the ranks of William Morris LA, and then transferred to William Morris New York.
Okay.
And then after being there for literally only a couple of months in New York, I started my company, Pipeline Entertainment, which is a production/management firm. So we rep writers, directors, producers, cinematographers, costume designers, and everyone in between,
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And I wonder, before we dive into Dementia 13, I wonder if you can just tell us sort of maybe what do you look for in a script, and then if there's any just quick tips you have as a producer and manager, some quick tips. And then the other part B to that question would be, what's the sort of the path? How do you typically find new clients and sign them, or find new scripts and produce those scripts?
We're really kind of snobby over here. It's got to be really good and kind of original, you know? And we read everything, and you can imagine how many scripts I've read over the years. It's crazy. And I have that tick where if I start it, I can't do the drop it after 10 pages thing. I have to go to the end, you know? Mm-hmm. So thank God I read very fast. But we tend to internally develop scripts with our clients. So we're like hands-on from beginning to end. We did that with, I'm just looking at the one sheet here, the Shockwave Dark Side movie, for example, a 3D film we did a couple of years ago. One of our clients was like, I have an idea, you know? That's where that one started. Mm-hmm. And just the process was draft after draft, notes, draft. And then for that particular film, you know, it was, wow, we need to go find financing now, and now we need to go shoot it, and now we need to go sell it, and now we need to promote it, you know. Yeah. That was like a 7-year process to get it to, you know, distribution. It's crazy. Yeah. Very hands-on.
Yeah. So then how do you typically find new clients as a manager? Is it referrals? Can people just submit to your company and you'll read it, and if you really like something, you'll sign someone?
Yeah, I mean, we accept queries all the time. We're pretty cool with that. And then clients are primarily referrals. And every once in a while, somebody will blind query us on the management side. We'll, you know, look at their resume and what they've been up to and see if they kind of fit into the things we do, you know? Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then obviously meet them to make sure they're not crazy.
Exactly. So let's dig into Dementia 13. It's sure. a remake of a Francis Ford Coppola movie from 1963. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick pitch or a logline for this film.
Oh, where do we start? I mean, it's really about a family with a lot of secrets and kind of dubious intentions that go annually to their castle retreat in the middle of nowhere to pay homage to the little sister and daughter, obviously, who died in the lake, drowned in the lake when she was 6. And, you know, a night of terror ensues.
So how did this project come about? I'm just curious, what is the process for doing a remake like this? Did someone pitch it to you? How did you even kind of come up with the idea, hey, let's do a remake for that film?
Well, it's interesting. Justin Smith, who co-wrote the script, he is an exec over at Universal, and you know, I've known him since my William Morris New York days, and he just called us out of the blue early January of 2016 and said, have you heard of this movie? And I hadn't, and he's like, well, long story short, after a very long conversation, he said, if we can prove it's in the public domain, I think I can get it financed here, you know? So we proved it was in the public domain, you know, through Library of Congress and such, I think within 3 days, right? Sorry, that's my assistant I'm talking to. And then, you know, moved to contract, and Justin was like, so who do you want to hire to write it? And I said, Justin, we've done this before. Like, let's just dive in, you know? So that's kind of how we did that.
Okay. And so what does that mean, though? Like, was the original film based on a short story, and that short story was in the public domain, or this 1963 film is actually in the public domain?
It's crazy. The actual film is in the public domain. They basically changed the copyright laws somewhere in the 70s, where you had to like re-up things that were I guess not copywritten or something, right? It was a very strange occurrence, but there's like a list of 15 titles that, you know, like Night of the Living Dead is public domain. Huh. Because they didn't re-up when this law was passed.
I see.
Yeah.
And maybe this is more of a question for Justin, but I'm just curious because, like you, when this interview came my way and I was looking at the film, I have not heard of. Obviously, I've heard of Francis Ford Coppola, but I've not heard of Dementia 13 before this. And
right.
I wonder, is there like value in existing, you know, IP for something like this that doesn't necessarily have a wide audience already? Like, what was when Justin said, "Well, I can get this thing financed"? Why were the financiers interested in financing? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, we were, you know, involved every step along the way. But it's really because it is an existing movie that has kind of a cult following, and the name Coppola doesn't hurt. Um, that being said, we changed up the movie a lot. We paid homage to it. It's more like a retelling.
Okay, so let's dig into the actual writing a little bit here, and maybe you can sort of expand on that. How do you approach a remake? Did you guys somehow find the original screenplay and pull that into Final Draft and start hacking away there? Did you watch the movie and not actually see the screenplay? Maybe just take us through the actual, like, the physical steps of doing the adaptation, and even what you're talking about. How do you know what to cut away? Were there things that the original film did that you didn't like, you thought you could do better? Were the things maybe just the timing, the 60s versus nowadays? There's some things that maybe didn't play, so you had to change. Maybe talk about that process of actually doing the adaptation.
Sure. Well, yeah. Once Justin put the title on our radar, we immediately watched it several times. The original, because you can literally watch it like on YouTube for free. While we were watching the film to get familiar with it, we had one of our assistants actually transcribe the film into Final Draft to kind of use as a roadmap, And then as far as process goes, what they sent over, this movie is written in an 8-act structure instead of your typical 3, because it'll eventually appear on, TV. So Justin basically sent over a 3 acts of an 8-act structure. And he's like, it's all I got, man. Just go, So I took that and then just kind of riffed off of the original and preserved the parts of the original that I think are the iconic bits of that original. They made the movie in like 6 days for $30,000. And I think he wrote it in 2 days. So, Roger Corman, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So I took all of those elements and, I had conversation with Justin and my team here at Pipeline of what we wanted to preserve and where we wanted to go with this different kind of act structure. And then just kind of hit it. I think I delivered a draft from start to finish in a little over 3 weeks.
Okay. And
then,
did you guys ever do any actual collaboration in the same room, or it sounds like you're just passing drafts of the script back and forth?
Yeah, we basically did that first draft and then, had everybody at my company read it to give notes as well as Justin. And then, had a lot of conversations. We've developed stuff before in the past, so we have a very good kind of working relationship when it comes to writing, really collaborating, But yeah, we just passed it back and forth a bunch of times and then did a final pass and, went into production, really.
Okay. Was there any development process? I always like to ask the writers sort of what their development process looks like. Like, once you had a draft that you felt confident, did you send it to some trusted friends, some trusted writers, get notes back, and then start to rewrite it? Or it sounds like things were moving quickly and maybe there was no time.
Yeah, we did that here internally. We have a lot of, because we are a management firm as well. So we had a lot of the assistants read it, different partners at the firm. And we were moving pretty fast, clearly. But, everybody, because we read so much over here, that everybody had really strong notes, which were easy to implement in a sense and kind of put a spin on,
So did everything in terms of, once you had the script done, did you prove that it was in the public domain? So then did the financing come in? So when you're writing the script, you knew 100% this was financed, or you wrote the script and then there was still some work to be done in terms of bringing in the financing?
No, we were really lucky in the sense that upon signature of the overall contract was the first payment. And then, the next step was approval of the screenplay. I think the next was start of pre-production, and then halfway through production, that kind of setup.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, which was great.
Yeah. So how can people see Dementia 13? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like?
Yes, it's playing for a week starting October 6th in LA and New York theatrically. And then October 10th it goes to all the different like video on demand, iTunes, those kind of platforms.
Okay.
And then eventually it'll air broadcast on, I want to say, the Chiller channel and Sci-Fi channel. And it'll go international after that.
I see. Perfect.
Yeah.
And what's the best way for people to keep up with you? At the end of the interviews, I just like to ask the guests, if you're on Twitter, website, a personal Twitter account, anything you're comfortable sharing, even if your company has one, just so people can kind of follow along with what you guys are doing and maybe keep up with you. Anything you're comfortable sharing.
Well, the company website is pipeline-talent.com. And so you can see kind of like all the different productions we've done and all of our clients that we manage and such. And then I guess, our emails are all on that. And then the Dementia 13 Facebook page would be a good spot. There's a lot of activity there. I think I was looking at right before we hopped on, and the trailer's up to like almost 200,000 views in 2 weeks. Pretty good turnout.
Yeah, nice.
But they're releasing a lot of cool, like, behind-the-scenes stuff and different clips of the film and such,
Okay, yep.
I would say those are the best two places because, running a management firm, we're here all the time.
Yeah, sure. So I'll gather that stuff and put it in the show notes so people can click over. Dan, thank you for coming on and talking with me today. I really appreciate it, and good luck with this film.
Thanks so much. Very nice to meet you over Skype.
Yep, you too. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good one, man.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations. It's just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We can also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this might be a good way to do it. We will also write a logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase it as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Just a quick shout out to screenwriter Olivia Brooks Skiravanch, who used the SYS email and fax blast service a while back. She met a producer through the blast and is working with him to polish her current script and perhaps even turn it into a TV series. So that's fantastic. Congratulations, Olivia. I added a little blurb about her option and her success to the SYS success page if you want to learn a little bit more about it, or if you just want to check out what some other people are saying who have tried the various SYS Select services. You can also see some of their testimonials on this page as well. And again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. And if you've had some success with some of the SYS Select services, please do just email me. I love hearing these stories. They're very inspirational. I love to share them with the podcast audience as well. I think they're inspirational to everyone. Just hearing about other people just having success, I think, is a great way to just keep motivated and keep yourself moving forward. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer, director, and producer Shane Abess. He recently did a sci-fi film called The Osiris Child. We talk about how he was able to get that film financed and produced, so keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview. One thing that stuck out to me was the fact that this whole process, Dan said this whole process took like 7 years. Even low budget films, which don't necessarily show up in thousands, multiplexes across the globe, are still difficult, and they take a ton of work. And I'm going through this experience myself with The Pinch. I mean, and The Pinch is, as I said, it's a micro budgeted film, super low budget, but even that has taken a number of years. From the time I started writing the script, and assuming that I am actually, am actually going to finish the project before the year is up, which I think at this point is a reasonably safe assumption. That's a solid 3-year process. I think I started writing this script at the very beginning of 2015. I wrote the script in 2015. I then did my Kickstarter in early 2016, shot the film in the summer of 2016, and then I've been in post-production now for well over a year. So again, these projects just take time. Just all of these things, there's a lot of pieces to producing a film. And I think this is important to remember, because oftentimes when you're just starting out with this process, or even if you're in the middle of this process, it can feel like it's never going to end, and it can be very, very discouraging and demoralizing. But eventually, if you persist, hopefully you will get through it. And I really think that's really key. And I hope a lot of what I'm doing with this podcast is just demystifying the process. So when you're in the middle of these, and some of it just relates to just writing a script. Sometimes you're just writing the script and just getting through that process. It feels like it's never going to end. You have these moments where you just want to give it up. You just think it's going to end up terrible. That's the process. And as I said, just look at this film, this Dementia 13. It's a small little film, and it still took Dan. And Dan is an experienced producer with a lot of experience, involved with a lot of very experienced filmmakers. And it still took them 7 years to get this film all the way through production. So again, don't get discouraged. Just keep plodding along, and hopefully eventually you will get through it. Another thing that I thought was interesting from this interview was how this project came to Dan. It was through his co-writer Justin Smith, who Dan knew before this project. This is exactly why, as a writer, you need to establish a number of relationships with industry people. Justin probably pitched this project to several different producers like Dan, but ultimately Dan was the one who liked it and came on board. But this is a real world example of how establishing these sorts of relationships as quickly and as soon as possible in your career can really help. Then when you have these relationships in place and you hear about an opportunity, in this case, Justin heard of an opportunity where he thought he could get this film financed if there was just some of the legal hurdles they could get over. He called up Dan. Dan had the ability to help get through those legal challenges, and then boom, they were able to raise the money, write the script, and produce the movie. And again, having these contacts in place is very, very important. So when you hear of opportunities, you can start to work those opportunities and talk to those people, and you go in already with a relationship. If Justin did not have a relationship with Dan and he had just pitched this project to him, would Dan have gotten involved with it from the start? You never know. Maybe he would have liked the project. Maybe it would have come across, but probably not. Establishing those relationships early, getting people to read your material, even if it doesn't necessarily result in an option or sale, can still start to build that relationship. You meet directors, you meet producers, they read your stuff, they like it. Maybe they can't do anything with that particular project right now, but maybe down the road, there'll be other opportunities for you to approach them, or vice versa, for them to approach you with projects. So again, relationship building. And I think, again, this is a real world example of kind of how ultimately those relationships, come to fruition and end up in a produced film. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.